panel discussion for the day with the topic CERT-In latest guidelines, adoption and adherence. Let me first introduce all the panel speakers, and I also request the panel speakers to be on stage. First we have Mr. Nirupam Sen, who's the business head, North and East Regions, British Standards Group BSI. He has 22 years of industry experience and is currently associated with the British Standards Group as business head. He is the profit center head of BSI and has extensive know-how in capacity building and auditing of management systems like information security, business continuity, risk management, quality management. A great round of applause, please. Our next panelist, we have Dr. Charru Malhotra, who's the professor of Indian Institute of Public Administration. She is currently advising 10 ministries and departments constituting sectoral group of secretaries. She has also presented research findings at various universities worldwide and is an academic contributor to Economist Intelligence Unit and to Oxford University. She has also published more than 93 papers in recognized international and national journals and books, which have been released by eminent leaders, including the Vice President of India. A great round of applause. We also have amongst us Mr. Somenath Kundu, who's the alternate CISO DGM NTPC, with having nearly 18 years of experience in operational technology, cybersecurity, risk management, enterprises architect. He has been handling legacy systems in a safe and protected posture, infrastructure and policy making. He has also acted as an enterprise architect to provide high-level designs across the engineering and technology domain. Our next panel speaker, we have Mr. Bohitesh Misra, CTO Avexa Systems Private Limited. He has more than 25 plus years of experience in managing mission-critical IT DevOps, digital transformation, planning and managing IT services. He has also several awards in his kitty. To name a few of them is CIO 1000, COVID Global Superhero, CIO 2020, Smart Innovator Award, and etc. Our last panel speaker, we have Dr. Deepak Kumar, who's the Senior Cyber Intelligence and Digital Forensic Expert of India. A great round of applause, please. He has delivered workshops and corporate training to IT companies, esteemed academic institutions, law enforcement, and has also trained more than 80,000 plus high-end professionals individually to date. Also awarded with various industry-recognized certificates, received several appreciations. It's an honor to have all of you here with us. A great round of applause for all our panel. Now I would be requesting Mr. Nirupam Sen ji to please moderate this session. Sir, on to you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you. Thank you, Infosec Foundation and Shushavon for having me here. I flew from Calcutta. I am based out of Calcutta, and I flew from Calcutta yesterday. Interestingly, the moment I fly in from Calcutta, there rains start in Delhi. I wonder why, but last 3 visits of mine to Delhi, rains have started, traffic gets disrupted. So maybe the rain gods either want me here permanently or they do not want me to come here. So not sure about that. But anyway, so today we'll talk about an interesting topic. The pre-lunch sessions are a little bit of risk because you tend to compromise on your digestive enzymes. So we'll try to make it short and sweet and crisp to the extent possible so that you're not compromising on your lunch sessions. But anyway, so we'll talk about the certain new guidelines that have been introduced by the Computer Emergency Response Team of India. And just to give you some sort of a statistics, till February 2022, there were 2.12 lakh of cybersecurity incidents happening across the country. And the threat landscape day by day is going on changing. Have any one of you heard of my friend Kyla? Interesting, she's not my friend, but that was a surveillance device. That was a doll that was launched by a country, and what happened was that it was a voice recognition doll. So what used to happen is that this doll used to work in conjunction with the operating systems Android and iOS, and that device used to work as a surveillance device. So initially the kids were using it, and this surveillance device was also capturing data from the kids as well as their parents. So from 2014 till 2017, when this device was being used by kids all across the world. In fact, there was one year when this surveillance device won the award for the best international toy as well. Then there was a penetration testing done on this surveillance device, and it was realized that they were purely stealing data from the people and from the kids. So that's how Germany banned this doll. And so that's how you see the threat landscape is going on everywhere. It goes right from kids to their parents and to the organizations, irrespective of the nature of work. So CERT-In, to look at, not primarily on my friend Kaila, but to CERT-In to stop these cybersecurity incidents, they introduced the new guidelines. I'll just give you a brief on what these guidelines basically cover. They cover time synchronization. Your ICT clocks need to be synchronized with respect to the National Physical Laboratory or the National Informatics Center clock. Anyone having operations outside of India, they'll have to synchronize their clocks as well as with a clock which is following atomic time. There is a requirement to report the data breach within the 6 hours of any data breach happening in an organization. I consider that time a little bit too low because in developed countries that's around 48 to 72 hours. There is a point of contact to be established. ICT logs need to be maintained for 180 days. You have to register your suppliers as well. There's a KYC record of customers to be kept for a period of 5 years, and transactions need to be monitored. So with this introduction, I'll pass it on to Bohitesh Misra first. We'll just do a first round. Will be kind of a discussion wherein everyone shares their thoughts on the pros and cons and maybe the difficulty of implementation, what could be the positive points as well. So over to you, Bohitesh. Any case study that you would like to share as well, please.
Some MSME extension was this is just not compliance perspective, it is mandatory.
Yeah. Thank you, Bohitesh. So we'll come back to you. So now I would hand it over to Somenath Kundu, who is the CISO in NTPC. As you understand, essential utility services, and for them, cybersecurity is a very key aspect because there have been guidelines from the Power Ministry as well. So Somenath, over to you on your thoughts on the new guidelines.
Just a small correction, I am alternate CISO.
Okay, alternate CISO. Yeah, thank you. Sorry for that. Yeah.
So, first of all, I need to thank Infosec Foundation for inviting me into this program and allowing me to sit with such eminent panelists and be a part of this wonderful program. Now coming to these CERT directives, you see that once the colonial pipeline incident has occurred and there was a thorough rethinking about incident reporting, profiling, how to go about with it, and as I think in the starting note, our moderator started that 6 hours is a very big time. So NARC all of a sudden then reduced the time to 1 hour. So, so you think that advanced countries are now in a situation where they can report in 1 hour, or they are mandated to report in 1 hour, and we are talking about 6 hours. But starting from that point, based out of our experience, what I felt is that now coming to the perspective of huge operational technology gamut, where there are different plethora of tests, different complexities. Availability is of utmost importance because everything is in millisecond operation, and the moment these operations get hampered, you know, this health safety environment, so there lies the underlying risk also with it. Then again comes, since we are dealing with the OT, the complexities of the OT, then the dependence on the OEM of these OTs, how to deal about with it. But citing all these informations, in a nutshell, how to go about with it, I think is that maybe we can think of first a baby step of having a localized SIEM kind of environment for our OT also. Security Operations Center. So this might be a baby step whereby we can create localized SIEM in each and every geographical locations of these installations of ICT. Then coming to the log repository, once we have this SIEM, then definitely we can also call upon for the log repository, and these are very complex things. Once we go into the detail of keeping logs of all ICT devices for 180 days, you know, this normal, if we, let's say if we talk about any kind of an L2 switch, and that's an industrial L2 switch, how much log can it contain? Now I need to connect huge amount of such L2 switches into a network just to contain the logs of these switches. It's a difficult stuff, and still I think all the organizations are going through it and growing through it. And trying to evolve out of it. Now there is a concept of cybersecurity suite, Active Directory, role-based access control in operational technologies also. And with advent of SIEMs with backgrounds of curator kind of environment or Mitre kind of environment, it is becoming a little bit easy to implement, but yeah, definitely it comes with a lot of commercial implications into it, and that is where large organizations might not feel the heat, but small organizations definitely will feel the heat of complying to these directives. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Somenath. The initiative as a whole, I would say, definitely is laudable, and the pure conclusion for which this initiative has been taken is to bolster the cybersecurity efforts of the Government of India. However, there are pros and cons to each initiative, as Somenath mentioned. In addition to IT security, now the power plants have moved into OT security. And the information repository with respect to OT security as well as in a power plant is huge. So having a cybersecurity incident reported within 6 hours, I consider it to be pretty difficult. As I said, developed countries have a span of 48 to 72 hours by which the cybersecurity breach is reported. Because by the time you realize as to which systems are compromised, it takes at least 24 to 30 hours. So yes, I do agree with Somenath on this. Thanks, Somenath. So I'll pass it on to Dr. Charru Malhotra for her thoughts on these guidelines on cybersecurity by CERT-In.
Thank you, moderator. And before I start, my overwhelming thanks to Infosec, not just for inviting me, but for gathering all of us. I see several familiar faces. I see eminent people who are in the field. But more than that, I think the more we discuss this, the more we'll realize what kind of Achilles heel we have when it comes to cybersecurity. Before moderator, I proceed to talk about the guidelines. I think it's very important for us to not mix up two points. One is cybersecurity and second is digital hygiene. Throughout the morning when I was listening to our eminent speakers, I realized, yes, I know one thing leads to another, but we should not forget that cybersecurity comes in a pyramid, where the bottom of the pyramid is hygiene with individuals. The middle meat comes in terms of interconnected machines, where you have LAN, WAN, internet, perimeter, etc., which is probably your and my responsibility as CISOs to my right. And then on the top notch is the critical information infrastructure of the country, which is national, issue. Yes, there is a very thin line, but important point is that one thing leads to another, but they are still different. Second, you talked about surveillance. Surveillance is eavesdropping, and eavesdropping happens when you speak loudly. So that is something at hygiene we should be very careful about. However, when it comes to guidelines, as I was discussing with you outside also, guidelines, I can go through these guidelines 10 times a day, and I always find there is a small, window which is probably been overlooked. 6 days of reporting, okay, when you notice the incident. So that is something you have to keep in mind. It's not 6 days, incident happened today and after 6 days I have to report it. It is, when did I first notice it? And when I went through this again, I realized this was just a fine print in the guidelines. So a lot of times, moderator, it happens, and my eminent friends, that guidelines also are, they guide less and they confuse more. Second is 180 days, you said, 180 days are rolling. Okay, they are not as in 180 days and then you delete it. So that is another thing. What is important in the whole story is that these guidelines should be clear to each of us, because we don't know if we fall in the ambit of these guidelines or not. So that's another take I have to give. While doing all this, I would also say, throughout the whole process, I'll come to it again and again, we need to network together. We need to talk, not just as in two people who know each other, but people in academia, people in industry, people in training, people in startups, people in government. Till we don't listen to each other, these guidelines will become tight containers around us. They need to have porous, agile, recursive mechanisms of refining themselves. अगर आप इन गाइडलाइंस को अच्छे से पढ़ेंगे और अच्छे से इम्प्लीमेंट करेंगे किसी सैंडबॉक्स में, we should not make guidelines without sandboxes, and sandboxes can come only when we connect. So there are a lot of issues. As a professor, I can keep rambling, but I have eminent people around me, and I'll wait for next turn of questions. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Yeah, great point on sandbox testing as well. And I do agree that when it comes to designing a guideline, they should be kept sweet and simple, because it has to be understandable by each and every person, including the common person. So that's where I felt that maybe we could have some improvement. We have a gentleman from CERT-In here. I'll just come to you. But before that, I'll pass it on to Deepak for his thoughts on the benefits and why this is being implemented.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, Infosec Foundation, who inviting me, Sri Shobhanji and their team as well. I'm a regular speaker for this panel, since 2017. And I have only one thing would like to say regarding the directives of CERT-In. ये काफ़ी देर आया, इसे पहले आना चाहिए था. And India is a very big market regarding the cyber domain. Like if suppose anybody create a phishing page only in Indian perspective, if he spread that phishing page in Indian cyberspace, only a click perspective he can able to earn hell amount of money. So that is a connect of a cyber crime here. But when we talk about frauds, talking about attacks APT perspective, which is happening in OT sectors as well. So the diversified, the segment is very big. So the segment and the pointers which is mentioned in this directive, like itne time mein aapko report karna hai. Abhi bhi question hai, report kisko karna hai? We even don't know exactly Even we in India, there is no proper spokesperson, or you can say a CISO, you can say basically, or a nodal, or you can say grievance, or any person who actually took that alert or took that incident. Even though you see, I mean, various incidents which has happened, like Domino's or XYZ. Even the companies claim that nothing happened. Do you think nothing happened? Are you sure? You even can search those information on Google, on dark web as well. Those PII details of those information still available. So the question here is, like, from the government perspective, it happened actually. I know various issues are there. 6 दिन 10 दिन लग जाते हैं इंसिडेंट को फाइंड करने में हुआ क्या है. 6 घंटे में how you can report. So still, I mean, the process are there, guidelines will be there, SOPs will be creating, and I mean the areas, sectors will be there. If we report in a proper manner, at least we'll get to know, yes, this incident happened. A single question, anybody tell me exactly what kind of ransomware attacks happen in India? You go with various reports or white papers. When you talk about the incident which has happened in Indian cyberspace, that is completely different. That is not the well-known threat players basically. So the question here is, like, first at least share with us in a proper timeline, so at least we can study exactly who are the threat actors, who are the players, who are targeting, what is their purpose, what is their threat. I mean, when we do threat mapping and when we do analysis of those threat actors or basically various framework, then at least we come into one picture. Then step by step we'll think about the legal things, like if any things which need to improvise. When you say, suppose anything happened and that person hacked, or that person put something on different server which is not comes in Indian jurisdiction, in that case what LEA will do, what CERT-In will do. So various things are this, not only like surveillance perspective, sharing perspective, there are other aspects also there. So I would say one thing, yes, step by step we have to think onto the things. I know various challenges are there, various challenges, but still if you stick with the challenges and those areas, then we will not move ahead. So this is a simple take from my side.
Yeah, thank you, Deepak. I do agree with Deepak to an extent that timeline is, I clearly felt important, because CERT-In introduced the concept of cybersecurity and cyber incident way back in 2009, so far that I remember. Then these guidelines were introduced in 2013, post which in 2022 we have seen a change happening. So from 30th April 2022 was when the guidelines were released, and now they have kept the extension till 25th of September 2022, by which you need to comply. However, the cybersecurity dates as back as 1995, when the standards on information security were released. So I'll just come to them. So we could not have Dr. Sanjay Bail, who's the DG of CERT-In, to be here because of his busy schedule. But we have Mr. Sabyasachi Jena from CERT-In in the audience. May I request him to post some insights, please? Yeah. Can you pass on the mic to him? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Sabyasachi from CERT India. Actually, I'm not prepared for this. We hardly get any time. Today morning only we get to know that we have been invited. So our director directed us to attend this seminar. So not saying much. I'll just say something about what like CERT-In is all about and what we are progressing. As you know, it has been formed in the year 2004. So progressively, we are evolving day by day. We are trying our best. And most eminently, I would like to tell one thing, that whenever we used to interact with our customers or any, we have our different teams, like we have Asia Pacific CERT and other countries. We are collectively we are doing some exercises and all. So we could realize that whatever in field of cybersecurity we want to implement, that is most in the downstream. The people are maybe aware, but at the upstreams people are not aware. Whenever our director or our DG they interact, they used to know that the things they are not very clear about. They are just beating around the bush. So we are trying to have certain SOPs, and like you might have aware about the CCMP plan, that is under revision as well. So shortly we are going to publish it, the version 2022, where we would like to cover all the areas, all the financial sector, energy sector, and all departments, where they can have a overall overall view of that thing, and they can, after referring that CCMP, they can have their own guidelines and set of rules in order to act towards cyber security. So that's all I want to say. I hope I am not even prepared for this. Certainly, Mr. What is his name? I don't remember.
Shushavan Mukherjee.
Yeah, he called me and he asked me to say something. So that's all I want to say. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you very much. You managed the bouncer well, so it doesn't matter if you were not prepared, but thank you very much for that. So I'll move back to Bohitesh again. So considering your organization, what are the steps that you are taking, and how challenging do you think is the implementation of these guidelines?
Sure. So let's say with respect to time synchronization, I'll give you an example here. When we were developing the Indian Railway reservation system, and the first system was implemented in Delhi, before 1995, it was an isolated, disparate systems working in Delhi, Bombay, Kolkata, Madras, and Hyderabad. So they were all separate systems. They were not interconnected with each other. For back reservations, you have to go to a particular terminal. Some old guys would appreciate that. So we implemented the networked reservation system. So the first system was implemented in Hyderabad, and another, when we had migrated Delhi PRS is passenger reservation system. So PRS system was implemented. And when we networked Hyderabad and Delhi, so we had there was a cluster of servers. So we had synchronized all the time for those set of servers. But when we were evaluating the log of the transactions, we realized that some of the transactions were done before 8 o'clock in the morning. So there was a counter which would start at 8 everywhere, but some of the transactions were done before 8. So that was a puzzle for us. We realized then when we deep dived into the issue, we realized that Hyderabad was 2 or 3 minutes before our time. So those transactions were done from that side, and then we realized the sensitivity of this time synchronization. And as and when we implemented Chennai, Calcutta, and other PRS locations, so all were synchronized into a single time frame. And we started using NPL time at that point of time. This was 1995 time when I'm talking about. So we have to realize the issue of time synchronization, but I still see a challenge in implementing time synchronization for those millions and millions of IoT devices, because the compute power of those IoT devices is still low. And I would say, how would you synchronize the times of IoT devices or IOMT devices, because we are into medical analytics. So I understand when we are going to implement IOMT into our system, it will become a challenge. So I still feel these guidelines are good. They have come at the right time. I would say when privacy policy was withdrawn, right, and CERT-In would have realized that this is the right time that we should come out with these policies and guidelines, because now they are the sole authority. Earlier, their authority was being taken over by that cyber security or that policy which government of India took back for further improvement. So I still believe that these challenges are still there. Industry has represented to CERT-In about how 6 hours can be extended to 72 hours for reporting these breaches, and other challenges are still there. We'll talk about in the session, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Bohitesh. So I do agree with Sabyasachi and Bohitesh to an extent. Number one, about Sabyasachi, what he mentioned, I clearly felt that, in fact, I only read about these guidelines before I came for this moderation, because I was not aware having released these guidelines. So you see, that is not reaching to the audience to an extent. So maybe we need to put in an effort so that it reaches to the audience, number one. And so I'll pass it on to Dr. Charru. Like Sabyasachi also mentioned, awareness building is an important aspect with respect to these guidelines. So where do you think capacity building stands, and how do we need to educate the organizations as well as the industries with respect to capacity building?
Thank you, sir, because this is my, what I would say, my passion point. You touch it and I start rambling. Yes, you have a point. You have a point. And capacity building does not just mean training. Capacity building is sensitization, it's social advocacy, it is using all means depending on what kind of audience you have. I was surprised when you said that you were not aware about certain guidelines. 28th April ko ye release hue. 29th ko we started getting invites from everybody to conduct sessions or to conduct seminars. So that is why what I said, I'm repeating. These capacity building endeavors need not just experts on my right and left, but they also need us, the academics who are constantly analyzing and doing postmortem of these guidelines. Second is, in the morning we heard that 99.9%, that was a number which would have made any of us cringe inwards, because 99.9% of LEA, if they are not aware of the repercussions of these guidelines or how to protect the beneficiary or the citizen, itself talks a lot about capacity building. So if you go back to the pyramid I proposed, capacity building needs to be done on the same pyramid. The bottom of the pyramid need innovative mechanisms for advocacy and sensitization, which could be as simple as a mela, or it can be, a small, kind of the trigger that comes at the bottom of news items. To keep reminding them what cybersecurity means for them in terms of hygiene and what should they do and what should they not do. मैं तो कब से कह रही हूँ कि मोबाइल खरीदो और मोबाइल का जो पहला पॉपअप स्क्रीन हो, that should be to women and children and old people about how they should not share their information. Simple multilingual interfaces. So that is bottom of the pyramid capacity building. Then we come to CISOs. My organization, Indian Institute of Public Administration, headed by Vice President himself, we do a lot of capacity building endeavors for IAS officers, defense officers, for CISOs themselves. I was just doing a CISO program just 2 months ago. So that is one layer which is probably not just needing capacity building in terms of trainings, but also why can't we create a platform where all the best and worst practices of cybersecurity are uploaded and we can just go and check. I know PsyCod has done a very good job, but it is still not making an impact. I know I4C is doing a good job, but it's not still platform of practices. We come to the top notch. Yes, capacity building is important for that. People upstream are not aware, only downstream are aware. Yes, sir, I know. It means we need to, CERT-In and IIPA needs to be in touch with each other again. There is so much more I would like to say. First and the last point is capacity building can happen only if you have somebody inside your organization. एक व्यक्ति सीसो, सिर्फ सीसो क्यों होता है जिसके ऊपर सब कुछ आ जाता है, CTO हो जाए, एक सिंपल डेटा एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर हो जाए, एक ट्रेनर हो जाए जो कॉन्स्टेंटली अलर्ट्स इशू करता रहे, गाइडलाइंस इशू करता रहे. सर आपने CCMP की बात की. Unfortunately, even Government of India does not reveal CCMP templates to us. So you can imagine what capacity building becomes for us, a very tough task. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Charru Malhotra. And I do support what you said about mobile phones, because education is very important right from kids to the elders. In fact, we have Mr. Sanjay Das here, who I'm sure will talk about this. West Bengal government has taken a lot of initiative when it comes to educating the normal people with respect to cybersecurity. They've introduced a booklet in local languages as well. So that is really helping the normal audience. So I'll move to Somenath. Somenath, if you could share some best practices that you are using in the organization, maybe not to use, not to meet the certain guidelines as such, but as a whole, certain best practices related to information security, cyber security, how you are managing incidents, etc.
Yeah. Hello. So taking the cue from ma'am, what we have done is that we thought that one CISO, one alternate CISO might not be enough for such a large organization like NTPC. So we have designated 3 CISOs for each and every geographical locations of our plans, projects or headquarters. Like one is the CISO instrumentation, one is CISO electrical and one is CISO IT. just to enhance the awareness among the local people, because yeah, there is literally a dearth of knowledge at the bottom level as well as of the awareness portion also. The second part is that definitely I think the time has come when each and every individual employee is to be held accountable and responsible for what he or she is doing. Otherwise, that urge to abide by or comply to any kind of guidelines or requirements doesn't come. And once that responsibility is thrust onto that person, definitely the compliance improves. The third part definitely comes to the lot of training sessions that we conduct, and already under Ministry of Power, under CES guidelines, it has been a mandate that every person working in energy sector, power sector, should undergo a certain level of trainings, level 1, level 2, level 3, some kind of intermediate, basic, etc. kind of a training from NPTI. So that guideline is already there, so that kind of training is already happening. Other than these, obviously there should be some best practices which you can derive upon from the cyber policies of your own organizations and try to abide by those policies. So one thing is that policy being a static book, the other thing policy being a live document and actively followed by the people. So time has come when these policies should not be in the repository or in the library of an organization. Rather, it should be actively followed by each and every employee. Once they go through the policy, they will have their own doubts, and those doubts can be cleared by the subject matter expert of those organizations. That is all I have to say in a nutshell about the best practices.
Yeah, thank you very much, Somenath. I do agree on policies. Wherever our organization has gone in for audits, we have seen policies not being changed for 3, 4, 5 years. That's a long time. Policies should always be kept dynamic because the threat landscape is changing every day. And with respect to cyber and information security, we always say that training is the best investment that an organization can make. Because if you consider the 3 triads of cyber security, be it people, process, and technology, you see the people are the most vulnerable. Even if you make your technology foolproof, you make your processes absolutely robust, it is finally maybe a fool at the end who's sitting with a tool, it's still a foolish situation. Right, so that's what you need to take care of by training people, by enabling them, by doing capacity building. So over to Deepak, just wanted to understand as to your thoughts on why this is being implemented and any case studies that you would like to share.
Before jumping with the question, I would like to share one thing. Like you mentioned about the human layer, means we implement huge amount of money to set up infrastructure. We have a good cutting edge technologies, tools in our premise, which can say like they can protect from advanced attacks, or you can say threats basically. But what about the human who exactly do study, or who try to collect the indicators, who try to respond that incident, and what exactly he is sharing to the strategy team or CISO or any concerned CXOs, so that information can be shared or disseminated to the concern or real authority. So that lack is there. So human layer in terms of capacity building or digital hygiene, that is the utmost layer. We're talking about the PPT part. PPT is just like we better know exactly the process, people, technology part, but here again, if we mention a proper CCMP or any sort of SOP guidelines, but again, if a person, they are not willing, they're not able to understand, and the team is not able to cope up with the latest attack vectors, or he or she not able to go through the root cause of that particular incident, then this is nothing. This is completely waste. Process is okay, then people are also there. Like in morning session, it was clearly mentioned that if a department called like a horticulture or XYZ, the CISO play a very instrumental role in any organization. I know cyber is a very new, not a new basically, you can say the attacks and the methods and the tactics, the procedures are polymorphic. Polymorphic means like it is not only targeting to one user, it's not targeting to one entity, it's targeting to various places, from the crime perspective, from the IT perspective, from the cyber and OT perspective basically. So the information is there. When talking about the incident perspective, again, first of all, we focus on the various framework, like MITRE is there and all. The question here is like if any incident happened, like ransomware, like even we see from the LEA perspective, LEA law enforcement agencies as well, the companies जो basically respond करते हैं. I mean, a simple concept, ransomware जैसे attacks हैं उन्हें हमें बचना कैसे है? Simple सा question है कि if it is latest ransomware, so possibilities are very less. Even which ransomware, which particular BTC, which particular there we have to share. So that entire homework is, you know, a person who is techie and who actually dealing with these kind of things, he or she only know. But providing this information in a proper manner, that is a big subject. And the entity like there are various entities who are hacked or who are compromised with these tactics. They don't know exactly where to report, how to report. They don't know the email IDs. Even if suppose somebody report, they won't get a revert from there. Various websites has been vulnerable, even it is an IC, GOV or any private. So the thing is what a phishing, a tactics, a campaign is already there. So cases are various. You take any example, phishing. Take a phishing example. 90% crimes are completely initiating from these kind of attacks, from phishing. Phishing days are gone. It's not like compromising and taking credentials. Nowadays, phishing is a method like where they try to get into somewhere and they try to collect those information for a data exfiltration. It could be PDF, Excel, DOC, XYZ. So this is the method nowadays. Finding exactly how it happened, that is a big question. With what exactly the threat attacked, the medium, how it came. Even though any services, you talk about any recent vulnerability which has been there. I mean, suppose you take any example, then what happens if that is not update or that is not patch, then simply the attack initiation is that point. And searching from logs, and these are different tactics. So question again here is like understanding any incident, understanding the root cause, understanding the vectors and the IOCs of how exactly that are working, that is the big concern. So that is one take, and very important from the prevention perspective. You do prevention when you know exactly how to defend. If you see, if you take example of the country Ukraine, Russia, छोटा सा country, even that country even able to maintain that thing through a big giant that country. So I mean, various examples are not pointing only these information, these country basically. So they have a very best defend strategy. So defending is very important. How to defend when we know exactly who are the attackers. That is a big question, and that comes through a hygiene perspective and all. And the last incident perspective, ransomware, APT, phishing attack. Nowadays the trend going from mobile-based application means anything which came through a mobile-based application. We have seen various frauds, just like instant loan application, WhatsApp-based nude call things are there. So these are by name it's very common, sextortion, WhatsApp nude call. But again, how it came? Once that application come to in your mobile, what information they will take? After taking those information in future, what kind of cyber security based incident has been occurred? That is again a chain basically. So we should understand the chain, the ecosystem, which is really a serious concern for the thing. And coming back to the same, why it is very important, because as we know, data is a oil. I mean, data is very important. Nothing is free here. So at least we should have data. We should do a predictive analysis with the help of Security Operations Center data, with the help of incident response through various ticketing and different platforms, with different EDR solutions, SIEM solutions, or various hackers or intruders who are trying to report to various agencies like NCIPC, CERT-In, NIC, I4C, various cyber agencies are there. So that is a big subject to understand at this need of the hour.
Thank you, Deepak. Do we have more time? It's already 1 o'clock. Shushavan, do we have more time, or can we continue with a few more questions? Okay. I'll get to the audience. Yeah, thanks, Deepak. We understood the concepts of CISO, and he definitely pointed out that it's very important to understand the threats that are there for an industry. Just an interesting question for all of you. Does any one of you know as to how the coinage of the term CISO happened? Where did it come from? Chief Information Security Officer. Are you aware as to where this term has actually come from? We see this being used across organizations and across everywhere in each industry. Any ideas? I can give you a chocolate if you get the correct answer right. I'll have to buy it from outside, but anyway. The term CISO has come, the Chief Information Security Officer has come from a standard which was BS 7799 earlier. That's the British Standard on Information Security, which nowadays everyone know that's ISO 27001. That standard came out as early as 1995 when India was not at all talking about cyber security at all. it had around 133 controls. Later it got changed sometime in 2005. Sorry, 2013 was the latest change, and it has now got 114 controls. In fact, the standard is again getting changed. So you see in the UK, cybersecurity started as early as 1995. So that's what I meant. We as Indians are kind of lagging maybe 14 years behind what UK is thinking, but we are slowly catching up. So good news for that. So one final question to Dr. Charru before I pass it on to the audience. Now this guideline requires VPN service providers to declare their KYC, the KYC data of their subscribers. So I clearly felt that with us talking about privacy, though the privacy law has been scrapped now after 5 years of efforts, I was clearly not a law, but the declaration I was clearly disappointed with that. I understand that's the reason maybe why these certain guidelines have come in. So do you think that this VPN KYC, the service providers of the KYC, do you think that will pose a threat to the privacy?
Yes, yes, and yes. Okay. Why we use VPN? We use VPN for privacy. We want to safeguard ourselves. We don't want our location to be revealed. We want to do transactions in a different manner. And the reason this is required. Let's go to the positive side first. The reason it is required is it will stop scams. It will stop anonymity by criminals. It will, and like somebody mentioned in the morning, it would stop not just scams but all the money laundering stuff that was happening. Now the flip side of it. The flip side of it, I was discussing with Deepak also, that several VPN parties have already, they've shut their shop. 3 VPN operators have already left our country, and one of them was my favorite, NordVPN. तो मैं नाम ही देख रही थी, ExpressVPN, Surfshark. These were 3 major players who have shut their shop in India. Now, do you think they did it because they were malicious and we were trying to spy on them? No. They shut the shop because they said that the contract or the privacy violations of the user enrolled with them is something they can't afford to do, because they were supposed to camouflage the identity of the user, and they had a contract with the user, and their privacy guidelines are getting flaunted by this implementation. CERT needs to look into it. As a technical people, I'm sure they are looking into it, कि सिर्फ ये VPN यहाँ पे बैठा है मेरे पास, और अब वो दुकान बंद करके बाहर चला गया, तो I can still have access to their services in other country also. ठीक है? So ये जो guideline बनी है ना, इसको याद रखना है कि cyber is a universal world. Cyberspace is not geographically constrained. Yes, I know we are talking about data localization, because उसमें ये बात आती है कि जितना data VPN ने रखा है, उसकी copy उसको Indian spaces में भी रखनी है. So that is another issue. And I should also tell you, 20% of the population through Atlas VPN, it was revealed, are already using VPN. 20% of Indian people or organizations, demography-wise, they are still using VPN. So VPN usage will continue. We could do it within the soil of the country or outside the soil of the country. What is more important is, how do I give privacy by design, or how do I give cybersecurity by design? Why should it become an enforcement on VPN provider or on the user to be digitally hygienic? Why can't my devices have that inbuilt? Ki before my data is siphoning out or is being piped out, I should anonymize, or I should safeguard or randomize hash keys encrypted. And last line of thought from a professor to all of you. सिर्फ VPN दुकान बंद नहीं कर रहे, iCloud के ऊपर जो मेरा private relay chat है, it is also coming under this ambit of cyber guidelines, CERT guidelines, because they are using the same encryption on their cloud, and the same guidelines apply to them, and everybody is not noticing that. So I don't need to just keep VPNs on the ambit of this law, but even my iPhone cloud is also coming in this cloud, in this ambit of this guideline. So last but not the least is, yes, I just wrote something that came to me. User privacy is clearly dead. Okay, it is over. Those days are over. So let's become more careful as users also. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Deepak wants to add something to this.
Uh, uh, Actually, just take a real example, like suppose anybody, if any incident happened, and you got to know that through log analysis, like that server is based in Isle of Man or Moldova, like different country, and you're sitting here only, and you are using VPN something. So definitely, you may go to law enforcement agencies, maybe CERT-India as a nodal. Then again, it come to us to ask the information. Then they are not sharing any information in a proper time. So why they're not sharing? If same thing happened with a different country with 5 eyes, 9 eyes, or US, UK something, so immediately they share anything, even it's WhatsApp, even it's anything. Why not India perspective? So we try to create something like, yes, हम भी कुछ हैं, हमें भी data चाहिए. It's not about the privacy perspective, or the real incident which is happening. So that is a big thing. So 3 companies or 4 companies, whoever left basically, they claim that their services still running in India. अब क्वेश्चन यहाँ पे है कि इम्प्लीमेंट हो गया है, बट हमें कॉम्प्लायंस मेंटेन करने के लिए चेक भी करना पड़ेगा एग्जैक्टली फ्रॉम इंडियन पर्सपेक्टिव विच आईपी इज़ देयर जो उनको सर्विसेज वहाँ पे प्रोवाइड कर रहा है, ताकि वो इंडिया की आईपी भी असाइन कर सकते हैं वीपीएन में. सो थिंग्स आर देयर, स्टेप बाय स्टेप थिंग विल बी कम, बट वी आर कीन अबाउट the requisition which we are giving from Indian through LEA, through CERT-In. So those information is required, that IP belongs to which ASN, which registrar, which something. क्योंकि यह केस बहुत सारे आ रहे हैं. आई दिन VPN is very common subject. कोई भी गेम होता है, बैन होता है, at least people use VPN, proxy something, and easily they can able to study. So that is the thing. So I know various issues will come, but we have to find the way to how to come out through this thing basically.
Yeah, so I have few points to make. For the point of contact, there is a provision that it has to be, the person has to be 24/7 available.
Absolutely.
So which means that you have to take care of holidays and his leaves and all that, so subsequently you have to keep updating those contact lists, and it has to be published on your website. Along with that, it has to be communicated to CERT-In. So that is a key point, that by 24/7 it has to be continuously updated. Another point is that these logs have to be maintained for 180 days. But in case a breach has happened, so that becomes a legal case, and then it is not 180, then till the case is closed, till that time you have to maintain those logs. Right? Then another point is that when you are storing these logs, when a breach happens, so your logs will also be compromised. So somewhere you have to maintain those logs separately into a secure location. So that's another cost for the organizations that they have to take care of.
सर यहाँ पे 2 चीज़ें हैं. एक तो ऐसा है कि बहुत सी कंपनीज ऐसी हैं जो हैक हो चुकी हैं, पता ही नहीं है, उनके डेटा ऑलरेडी अवेलेबल हैं, और कुछ ऐसे हैं जो टारगेट नहीं है. सो दैट इज़ आल्सो मिसकंसेप्शन फॉर द सेम पर्सपेक्टिव. और 180 डेज यहाँ तो साल लग जाते हैं पता करने में कि हुआ क्या है, विच APT वॉज देयर. 10 साल पता चलता है कि यस सम XYZ थ्रेट एक्टर वॉज देयर एंड दे साइलेंटली एक्सफिल्ट्रेट ऑल द डेटा थ्रू दिस पोर्ट नंबर, थ्रू दिस IP बेसिकली. एंड व्हेन वी ट्राई टू स्टडी दोज IP, सो अगेन 180 डेज का जब डेटा ही नहीं है, देन हाउ दे कैन शेयर दोज इन्फॉर्मेशन. And it's a one concept, like if you heard about fast flux, just want to add one more point, fast flux DNS basically. फ्रैक्शन ऑफ सेकंड में IPs चेंज हो जाती हैं. अब हम इंसिडेंट स्टडी करते हैं तो हमें वो IP मिलती नहीं है, वो किसको बिलोंग्स है. तो फास्ट फ्लक्स DNS जैसे कॉन्सेप्ट भी, टेक्नोलॉजीज भी हैं जहाँ पे BPHS बुलेट प्रूफ होस्टिंग सर्वर्स हैं जो इस तरह के कंटेंट होस्ट करती हैं, इवन चाहे वो कॉलोनियल पाइपलाइन अटैक हो, चाहे वो डिफरेंट पॉन कंटेंट ब्रेजर्स एंड ऑल XYZ हो. तो यह चीज़ें उन्हें नहीं मिल पाती एग्जैक्टली, यह कंटेंट कहाँ होस्टेड है, यह RAS सर्विस कहाँ से ऑपरेट हो रही है. सो थिंग्स आर आल्सो देयर. सो वी आर नॉट थिंक अबाउट द स्मॉल टैक्टिक्स, वी हैव टू थिंक सम द ब्रॉडर पिक्चर बेसिकली फ्रॉम द इंसिडेंट विच वी हैव सीन.
Even the subcontractors also have to follow these directives. So which means that if you have outsourced a product or a service, they also need to follow the same thing. And whether they have to report to the main contractor, no, they have to directly report to the CERT-In website about those breaches. So that means that if you have a contract that NDA or something has been signed and you don't want to disclose that, but this directive overrules that, that means you have to make this as part of your contract, that you can share all these data with CERT-In in case of a breach has happened.
Yeah.
Available 24/7.
Yeah, there's a helpline number for that as well, and some
that
email
is
IDs.
Incident
Yes.
at the rate cert-in.org.in.
Yes.
So that section is completely working 24/7.
Okay.
So who gets prosecuted in case a breach has happened? It's not the company, right? It is directors. So, but to avoid this, I would say that directors can, as a board resolution, can appoint CISO, and they can communicate to CERT-In saying that this CISO is responsible for all ensuring the compliance of certain guidelines. So then CISO becomes the single point of contact for that compliance and directive, maintaining that directive.
Yeah, I would just want all of us to take a pause here, okay? जितनी डिस्कशन हो रही है ना वो ये हो रही है कि अगर मेरे साथ कुछ ब्रीच हो जाए या मेरी कंपनी में कुछ गड़बड़ हो जाए तो मैं कैसे फॉरेंसिक्स करूँगा, मैं कैसे उसको लॉग को मॉनिटर करूँगा. मैं दूसरा लाइन ऑफ थॉट आपको कह रही हूँ. प्लीज़ लेट अस गो प्रोएक्टिव एंड प्रिडिक्टिव. AI tools are already there. Why are we saying कि क्राइम हो जाए उसके बाद 180 दिन तक लॉग मेंटेन, मतलब वो रिपोर्ट करना, वो सब वो that is not going to help me. I need to go into preventive measures rather than curing measures. Time is ripe for us. We know metaverse is there. We know AI tools are there. We know our organizations and government officers are so IT literate. They are no longer closed. So please let's have robust monitoring mechanisms. Let us have agile reporting mechanisms. And only then, and of course, like our dear moderator said, let us have a very, training is no longer a punishment. पहले ट्रेनिंग के लिए कौन से लोग भेजे जाते थे या होता था, जो लोग बिल्कुल काम नहीं कर रहे या जिन लोगों को छुट्टी पे जाना है. But now training is on my smartphone. So why can't I create small content which is self-paced learning, which is in local language, and it is training me. I don't need to have a formal training for that. If we do all this, then preventive becomes easier. Okay, क्योर की जरूरत ही नहीं पड़ेगी ना अगर अपने आप को ठीक से मेंटेन करेंगे. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just एक लाइन बोलना है मेरे को.
ठीक है, बोलिए.
So I want to, I think we are overshooting time. Sorry.
Yeah.
I want to just mention one thing. See, if as individuals, as organizations working in certain area or certain sector, हम लोग खुद अपना guidelines और directives decide नहीं करेंगे, it will definitely come as a very bitter medicine जिसको हमको पीना ही है. So these things will happen. अचानक CERT-In से कुछ guidelines आज आया है, कल कुछ और आएगा. So as sector-oriented operations, particularly operational technology, which is a very complex subject in itself as far as cybersecurity is concerned, we have to pull our socks and form our own guidelines first. Then go to the government, make them understand how we can amicably work through these guidelines and yet achieve a certain solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. As we are nearing food time, I guess we have another session after this, but I'll leave you with a food for thought. That is kind of a conclusion to what we have all discussed. I'll take you back to 1912, April 15. I don't know whether you remember the date, you won't. That was the date? Yes. Yes, absolutely. That was the date when Titanic sank. Now, the story behind Titanic sinking. Titanic at that time had 16 lifeboats present, and there were 2,200 passengers. However, Titanic was complying with the British maritime regulations that were present during that time. So they were complying to all the guidelines and the regulations. British maritime regulations at that time said that for a passenger strength and for the capacity of the ship, you need to have 16 lifeboats. So that was enough for the Titanic. But Titanic had a capacity of 48 lifeboats, which they did not utilize. So in spite of sticking to the guidelines, in spite of being compliant with the guidelines, the ship sank. So the basic requirement is the risk assessment for the organization. You will understand your business risks the most. Nobody else, not a third party, not auditors, not government bodies will understand your risks. So risk assessment is the primary step that you need to take so that your organization is cyber secure and you have information security implemented. So I'll end with that. We can take 2 audience questions. Yeah.
How many of they are practicing with red teaming and blue teaming with their company? आप अपनी कंपनी में ही अगर रेड टीम ब्लू टीम जैसी टीम डिफाइन करते हैं तो जो रेड टीम काम करेगा वही बाहर का हैकर वही स्ट्रेटजी यूज़ करेगा. तो पहले हम खुद एक्सरसाइज खुद कर सकते हैं. ऐसी एक्सरसाइज गवर्नमेंट ने भी काफ़ी कराई हैं और इंडिविजुअली कंपनी पर्सपेक्टिव में होनी चाहिए, क्योंकि जो अटैक मेथड्स टीटीपीज यूज़ करेगा अपना इंडिया अपने कंपनी के पर्सपेक्टिव में वही सेम चीज़ इट कैन बी यूज बाय द हैकर विच इज सिटिंग एट एनी प्लेस. इट कुड बी लाइक यू सी द एग्जांपल ऑफ यूक्रेन. A person can sitting at the village in Kanpur, he can able to do a DDoS to Russia. He just need one internet. So the thing is called internet. A simple concept is there basically.
Yes, please. Can you pass on the mic to him?
Thank you. My name is Kuldeep Saini from Thales Group. I have a question related to the OT. So these days, specific to the different sectors like the power sector, healthcare, or the mining, etc. And nowadays, the connected vehicles. Do we have any kind of guideline or anything related to the cyber security by design? We are talking about a lot about how to monitor the network, how to monitor these things, and how to fix or identify any threat. But we are not talking about cyber security by design because we have a very complex infrastructure, especially in the OT. Do we have anything like, we need to have this kind of device or these devices, whatsoever is going to be added in this ecosystem has to have or to comply with these cybersecurity requirements. For example, we need to have the authenticity of any software, any binary which is going to be loaded on this, and we need to perform the risk assessment, TARA, etc. before going, deploying these devices into the production. And everything else, monitoring of the network or, SOC, anything that comes later on, First of all, we need to take care of the cyber security by design. India में हो क्या रहा है? हम technology पहले लेके आते हैं, business पहले लेके आते हैं. We think about cyber security at a very later stage. जब कुछ breach होता है या कोई CERT-In से कुछ आता है, but we are not thinking, in advance about the cyber security. So anything related to that in CERT-In or any other government initiative about that?
We have an OT expert here.
You have touched a very touchy question which is very close to me. I can talk hours and hours on this subject. Yes, for Ministry of Power there is a clear-cut guidelines, and shortly one regulation is going to come, maybe early January or February, which has categorically defined each and every designed aspects as well as the cyber hygiene and posture of an organization. And once the regulation comes out, it will have penalties and punitive actions also to it. Now it's only a guideline. The guideline can be found in CEA's website. It's the CEA guidelines released in October 2021. It talks about two standards, and one of the standards is very, very close to my heart. It is IEC 62443. It has around 14 substandards into it, which talks about general system, then some mitigation part, and the product. So name it, everything is there, like product development lifecycle, software development lifecycle, supply chain, remote service center, everything is now, as far as the Ministry of Power is concerned, is performing the cybersecurity by design. It's no more adapting the technology and then implementing cybersecurity onto it. In fact, there is no harm in saying that if we are even using obsolete systems or legacy systems, now the mandate has come to put countermeasures to mitigate the vulnerabilities of these obsolete systems, if at all we cannot upgrade these systems to the latest one. So a Ministry of Power has an elaborate scale of affairs as far as the cybersecurity is concerned, and there are strict guidelines, strict standards to follow and comply upon.
And before that, we also think about the supply chain attacks. You read the things which has happened, and we read the case studies, because okay, compliance are there, guidelines are there, but again the question is, if something is not mentioned in that guideline or that thing, so hacker is not waiting for your guideline. The tactics is completely different. So various supply chain attacks is the major, which we see the trend perspective, that is also very important, like what kind of vendors are there, what kind of insider attacks are there. What about things, if something is not in OSI layer, doesn't mean that things cannot be hacked.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we need to have proper countermeasures to consider the insider or outsider attacks.
Correct.
Of course, we need to take that into the account.
Absolutely true.
Thank you very much. We'll end it here because I see a few hungry faces in the audience there. I'm sure you must be hungry for lunch. But I guess we have a session before this. Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you very much for your active participation. So we are here available. So if you want to catch up with us one-on-one, we are always there. Thanks a lot.
I would like to thank all of you for this stimulating session with such brilliant minds. I'm sure we had so much to learn and gain. I would now be requesting Mr. Nirupam Sen to please offer our mementos to the panels. Dr. Charru Malhotra. Yeah. A great round of applause, please. Mr. Somenath. Mr. Somenath Kundu. Mr. Bohitesh Misra. A great round of applause, please. And Dr. Deepak Kumar. I once again thank you all for taking out the time and enriching us all. I would now request Shalan sir to please give a memento to Nirupam sir. A great round of applause to our moderator.